Welcome, people. Welcome to another episode of the Tic Tac Transfer KHANAGE show. You're all very welcome. Sorry, I know many of you are complaining in the stream, late as usual, blah, blah, blah. Grizz fashionably late. Is it fashionable to be late? I don't know if it's fashionably late. But I can confirm, tier one info, I can confirm that it wasn't me. That's all I'm going to say. The rest of you can work out who it was, but it wasn't me.
I'll be late to my own funeral, bro.
Pay for your own funeral. I hope you guys are all doing well. Thank you very much for joining us. We are about 10-15 minutes late, but come on. You know, as my very good friend Matisse says, lateness is greatness. And I'm going to use that every time I'm late. But we're here. We're here to talk everything Liverpool transfers, basic mainly. We may drop a few, if there's any breaking news, we may talk about that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, how are we? Errol, we haven't spoken football, Liverpool for a little while. We had a bit of a dip at the end of the season. You're back, pre-season's back, transfers, season's back. Liverpool, with the moves they're making, could possibly be back as well.
Yeah, mate, like, write us off at your own peril. Like, at this point, Liverpool have put a strangle on the transfer window for me at the minute because the work that we're doing looks serious. We've set out our stall nice and early, and me and you spoke before the end of the season, and one of the things was, you know, getting a march and trying to steal a march on all the other teams around us. Because from my perspective, I felt like we had not necessarily the biggest gap, but we had quite a considerable gap considering where we'd kind of dropped the level to kind of re-establish ourselves within that chasing pack of City. From my perspective, it's always about overtaking City, but it's proved very difficult to do, even for the likes of us at our best in recent years. So it's good to see that Liverpool are being proactive within the transfer market, and it's nice to see that we're going to have some new lads come the next few weeks for pre-season.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, joining us again after his successful, magnificent debut, I must say. The public demanded it. I told them, you're a very, very busy man. It's not just a matter of, get Ben on. People demanded it. I mean, it was a success. It was a magnificent honor last time, and it is again. The very busy, the very hectic Ben Jacobs, who woke up this morning and chose violence against the Liverpool fan base by breaking the hearts of many, including myself, who had almost welcomed Kephran Thuram to Liverpool FC. Ben Jacobs, how are you?
Very good indeed. And as you say, I chose violence this morning, and I'm late also with even further violence because my tardiness is Manchester United related, because Mason Mount released the video confirming he's about to join Manchester United. So we don't really delve into that on a Liverpool show, but it's my fault I'm late. It's Manchester United related. This morning, I reported that Liverpool are not signing Kephran Thuram. So Liverpool fans are probably unfollowing me right now, left, right, and centre. And I don't blame you, to be perfectly honest.
No, they actually not. I'm sure you will gain many more subscribers and followers because, as I've said before, not every journalist sort of puts his neck on the line like I find you do. It's an industry that is, it's one of those ones where sometimes it's a survival of the bravest almost. And you've been brave, and we all love the way you give context to the stories. So, look, to most pundits or many pundits and journalists around Europe, it was seemingly inevitable that Kephran Thuram was going to join Liverpool Football Club. But alas, no, that's not the case, according to your information. Tell us kind of the timeline, according to the information that you have. What's happened here?
Well, I think the timeline is that Liverpool got Dominic Szoboszlai, a fantastic signing, but we should point out that they were not confident on that deal, had a whirlwind 48 hours, and then decided to trigger the clause. And of course, people may ask, how can you not be confident when you decide to trigger the clause? Because it's just there. So if the player wants to join, then in theory, if that's the route you take, it's actually quite a simple process. But the reality is that the market doesn't quite move that way. So you enter the race, maybe there's another suitor. You have to work out whether you're going to pay the clause, or as soon as it disappears, you're actually going to be able to offer a lower number and get the player for less, or the opposite may happen and a bidding war could ensue, and then you end up being cornered because the release clause was your friend in that scenario. Then you have to think about the payment terms as well, and ultimately what the club want to spend. So there's a lot of different aspects to this. It's not only about triggering the clause and player buy-in, it also comes with structuring the deal and making sure that you move in the correct way to get it done with the clause, but also financially speaking in a way that benefits the football club. So it was quite difficult, and there was low confidence that turned to high confidence that turned to done deal. So concurrently, of course, you're spinning multiple plates, and Liverpool were very seriously exploring Kephran Thuram. And my understanding is that that is now not an active pursuit, and reports suggesting that Liverpool are going to be in talks with Nice this week are incorrect. And the reason for that is partially because do you need Szoboszlai and Thuram? Because Thuram is not a out-and-out defensive midfielder. He started his career in that position, but there's obviously overlap and similarities between the two players. So that's one aspect, and Liverpool now are looking more for a destroyer, a modern defensive midfielder or number 6. And by modern, I mean that Declan Rice mould, whereby deceptively attack-minded despite playing in a central or defensive-minded position. And that means progressive passing, that means box-to-box, that means starting phases of play, that means chipping in with the odd goal or the assist. So in different kinds of game management, that type of player can anchor the team, either offering protection and being quite rigid, or bursting forwards with encouragement, but still respecting the role within the team, which has to be tenacious and energetic, but definitely a bit more fixed than the players ahead in Liverpool's system. So this is what Liverpool are looking for. They don't exactly grow on trees, and that's not Kephran Thuram, or it was Kephran Thuram, but Szoboszlai comes in, and now they want somebody that's more like Romeo Lavia, or actually the profile of Moises Caicedo, but price is a hurdle there. So this is why Liverpool have, for now at least, moved on. Of course, we can never categorically rule it out, and that's not me covering my back. It's just that when you get into pre-season, if you get an injury, if you get a player that wants to leave, if you ultimately don't start the season as well as you'd have hoped, then of course things can change. And you never say to a player it's over, or they feel devalued. And then what if you want to pursue them again?
Absolutely.
It might be in a few weeks, but doubtful. And that's why I'm reporting that the interest is no longer active, but it could be in another window. It could be in a year's time. So one aspect is Szoboszlai. Second aspect is just that the player himself wants a clear pathway in game time, because he's got one eye on the Euros. He's won one France cap, and it has to be a move that gives him game time. So naturally, with Szoboszlai there, it would be a struggle for Liverpool to convince Thuram that he would get a large volume of game time. And that may well be a factor on the player side. Now, that was not communicated directly between Liverpool and the player, but the Liverpool side sources indicate Szoboszlai, and the player side, they indicate wherever he goes, he wants that regularity of game time, because the Euros are ultimately next year. And the last thing I would say is that the misleading red herring in all of this is price. Because a lot of people will say, isn't it just because it's 60 million euros? And that's actually not my understanding. Sources close to Liverpool have indicated quite clearly that they don't think the price is anywhere near that. And if they wanted Kephran Thuram at 40 million euros, even 35 million, they think that deal is doable. So I don't think this is down to finances. The reason why they haven't pursued Kephran Thuram is ultimately down to the reasons that I've just outlined.
Absolutely. Sorry.
No, just two questions on that, really, especially on the Thuram information. Do you think we are still likely to, first one, do you think we're still likely to see him in the Premier League next season, if not in a Liverpool shirt?
I think there's a few clubs that are looking at Kephran Thuram, but nobody else in the Premier League at this point has actively moved. I know that Newcastle were one that took a look in January, actually. And obviously, he's in the sort of shop window at this point. So there's a real ability to move and capitalize on the fact that Nice basically want to sell. And even if the player can't find the right club or the right amount of game time. Financially speaking, Nice need to sell and they have to try and get the highest price possible, which is why we got the sort of 60 million touted. So Newcastle have shown an interest, but they've ultimately just brought in Tonali, who maybe billed as a defensive midfielder, but is really a number 8. So again, there'd be competition for places if he went there. And this is the reality of being a young player and going to any top Premier League club. Are you going to get the game time, or does he look to make a step that gives him a few more games, but still potentially Champions League with somebody? And that's where maybe Serie A could be one to watch. We're seeing a lot of players who are looking for game time from the Premier League make moves there because they know that it's a step that allows them to still play at the top level, but probably more games than they're playing in the Premier League if they're on the periphery of the squad or they're younger. So at this stage, I think that it's still quite an open race for Kephran Thuram, but it's not Liverpool that are pushing anymore.
Okay, and the second question, sorry, Chris, the second question I thought really was, what sets Liverpool apart from our biggest rivals in terms of competition in the market at the moment, in terms of the way that we're acting proactively? What is it that we seem to do differently, or what is it that what's within our profile that allows us to operate with so much proactiveness in the market?
It's a great question, and it's ultimately forward planning. And I think we've gone through such a year of upheaval and change that, much like we discussed, Grizz, the last time I was on, the fan base rightly are looking at the football. They're looking at the departures of either Ian Graham or Julian Ward, or even if we go back further, Michael Edwards. They're looking at FSG, and there's been periods for sure where we have questioned whether or not there's going to be any change or finances coming into the club. And there was even a sort of full sale narrative for a while. So when you sort of take all of that and then you look at the last few windows and the lack of a big purchase in midfield to the tune of a Bellingham, or before that, a Tchouaméni, of course, the fan base paying hard-earned money are thinking, have we kind of passed our peak in this model with this squad? But Liverpool internally, totally different mood, because the FSG plan was communicated to everyone at the club. The replacement for Ian Graham is internal. So again, there's been a transition. Everybody knew that Julian Ward was departing. So a plan was put in place. And as a consequence, Liverpool have never been unhinged by the situation, even if publicly it looks a little bit chaotic.
A bit disheveled, it looks a bit chaotic. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, trust me, on the ground, it looks all over the gaff.
Yeah.
And then when you then look at the recruitment, you cannot pull out Cody Gakpo before the January window even opened and relatively under the radar without planning ahead. And they worked on that deal and finalized that deal actually in the UAE, not Qatar, towards the end of the World Cup. And then again, Alexis McAllister, you don't get the buy-in unless you work on the player side. And they knew that there was value there. Everybody else was reporting 60 plus million. Liverpool realized that he was available on a release clause of 35 million. So again, that's due diligence, that's working on the player side. And then the atypical one is obviously Szoboszlai, because they did move very quickly, but that was more again about the finances and were they going to trigger the clause and was there another rival, but another player very much on their radar. So Liverpool are full of surprises, seemingly publicly, because privately they're working extremely diligently to make sure that they're working multiple windows ahead. And I think that this is important because it shows you that for all of the criticism at times, and rightly so, about the season that Liverpool have had, the model isn't changing. So there's a belief, and this goes all the way back to Brendan Rodgers at Liverpool when there was the same transfer committee, the same kind of style. There's a belief in the system. There's a belief in the recruitment. There's a belief in the window planning. There's a huge belief and backing behind key figures like Barry Hunter, the chief scout. And I mentioned Barry specifically because he's one of the best in the industry, but he's also in a rare role, because how many chief scouts are there out there now carrying that title? Very few. So you could argue it's either a dying title or Liverpool have kept that title and role for a reason because they think it's coming full circle. I think they're absolutely right. So it's about a foundational core that couldn't be more different to Manchester United. So Manchester United got the Champions League, but rotten to the core in so many ways, with a hatred between fan base and ownership group and a total hierarchy mess. And as a result, they may have won a trophy, but they haven't got that foundation yet to suggest they can do it again and again and again. Whereas Liverpool are the opposite. They didn't have the season they were looking for, but they have got the foundations to suggest that they can get back and do it again and again. And if you focus as a fan base, and I don't blame fans because pay your hard-earned money and success has been the default. So why not complain? Why not see there's been a gaping hole in midfield for more than one window, etc.? Totally fair points. But ultimately, if the model is trusted, then the recruitment team and the wider club will get it right, which means that I would still rather be Liverpool than Manchester United, because structurally Liverpool are still geared to success. And until they get new owners, Manchester United aren't.
Ben, all those subscribers and followers that you may have lost, Liverpool followers, you have gained in the opening 16 minutes. Let me assure you of that. So panic over on that aspect. I wanted to come to you as a supporter, Errol, and because we haven't spoken about, well, we speak about things every day, but I haven't spoken on a show with you. We wanted Liverpool to be slightly different in this transfer market, especially like Ben says, of course, after the season that we had, and we knew what was lacking. We knew where we needed recruitment. We wanted to be proactive, like you said, and adventurous and
aggressive in the market, though, Grizz.
But above all, I wanted Liverpool to go back to its smartness, being the smartest operator in the market, because we haven't got the finances of the other clubs. Now, I'm not defending before people start going, oh, here we go, Grizz and his pro FSG. I'm stating facts. We haven't got the riches of a Man City, Chelsea now, and United even as well, and a new
Arsenal have nearly splashed 200 million.
Exactly. So what we needed to be was smart. Go back to what made us being this great in the first place: smart recruitment. So far, it suggests we have been very smart in the market. Like Ben says, knowing about the McAllister clause before anyone else, and then not only knowing it but activating it and just getting it over the line. Brilliant stuff. And then the Szoboszlai contract, again, release clause. What I like about this transfer window, Errol, I want to come to in a long-winded way, is I love the way we're spinning plates this time round, as opposed to just Chouameni, as opposed to just Jude Bellingham, right?
Eggs in the one basket, man. You can't do that. Like, for me, from the outside looking in, I don't know how other teams aren't aware that players like McAllister have got that clause in their contract. It's like, maybe that's because we had Lallana down there playing agent and he's got an arm around them in the dressing rooms and saying, hey, lad, do you know what I mean? Where would you like to go after here? If I could go anywhere, do you know what I mean? Like, what is it that you've got to do to get up the road? And I would expect that that's just common knowledge within the footballing world. If you're in the know, you should be in the know about who's got what buyout, who should be able to go for what fee. But clearly, Liverpool seems to be ahead of the curve. And as you say, being able to act in such a way in this market where you're not putting all of your eggs into one basket, because when you break it down, the Jude, whether we walked away, whether he decided he didn't want to come to us, whatever the dynamic of that deal was, it floored a lot of Liverpool fans because we had become so heavily invested in it. I think the Liverpool fans, and I remember sticking my neck out on, I don't know if it was either one of your shows or Potter's shows, and I said for a long time, I don't believe that we're going to get Jude Bellingham. The reason I don't believe it, above everything else that you're hearing, you can see all the propaganda in the England camp with Trent and with Hendo, and you can see that Klopp's a real big admirer of him, and I rate that. There's nothing wrong with that. But my expectation was, when Liverpool operate, we're like ninjas. We're like snipers. We've got a target long range, and we hit the target from a distance. Nobody can see it coming. Apart from
when we're at our best, When we're at our best,
yeah. And I think, Ben made the point before about Cody Gakpo coming in the January, getting it done before the window.
That's forgotten already, by the way.
He hasn't even had a full season with us yet, and we're starting to see the type of player that he can become with, under Jurgen's system. So when I actually deep it, I actually think the Jude just didn't really make sense for me, simply because it was too vocal. everyone and everywhere seemed to have an opinion on it. And that to me, just when you think with your gut, that didn't sit right with me, because it seemed more like a Man United way of operating to land one of their targets that everybody knows is their target. And I liken it to how they moved and held themselves when it comes to Sancho. Every man and his dog knew Man United wanted Sancho, which then meant Dortmund had all of the player power and had all the ability to say, you want your man, this is how much it's going to cost, and unless you're willing to meet us at this price, you're not going to get your man. And he seems to have Dortmund, Man U, bent over the barrel in that respect. Whereas when we were seeing all this with Jude, and I know obviously Dortmund only tend to let one of their superstars go one a season, so they don't lose them all at the same time. But when we was doing that with Jude, I just felt like if something is too good to be true, it often is. And Jude seemed too good to be true for a long point in time. And the second thing that really reinforced that for me was, at one point, our form as a whole, it looked, for all intents and purposes, if Jude on his own, with his age and his profile, was not going to be enough. And that was the gut punch for me. My gut was already off, but that for me as a fan was the gut punch to say, Jude could be amazing. He could be brilliant. He could be a regen of Stevie G for all I know. But if this young lad comes in and doesn't hit the ground running, if this lad comes in and gets injured, if this lad comes in and doesn't settle, if this lad comes in and is out of favour because Klopp, for whatever, all these what ifs in my head are permeating, and I'm thinking to myself, he on his own is not enough to carry that weight of where we need.
And I think, Ben, that was, again, looking from the outside like we are, that was the key point, I think, in terms of strategy when it came to Liverpool's recruitment for this summer. Because Jude Bellingham as a player is fantastic. We know that. Possibly generational as the years progress. He will become a generational talent. But we knew if it's going to chew up most of the transfer budget, the state of the Liverpool squad, minus Champions League, just didn't make sense, did it, to just target one player? And so therefore we decided, and it's very apparent that we have decided, and we're going to move on to what we think they've decided to do now. After stopping the pursuit of Thuram, we decided to spread that money and cover a few bases as opposed to just one base. The initial move for McAllister, a ball-playing midfielder, like you said, Szoboszlai, a creative spark, a ball carrier, and now it makes sense to go for a destroyer, a more of a defensive-minded player, and that will complete the three sets of profile of players that I think, Errol, as Liverpool fans, we demanded. A ball, basically a Naby Keita replacement who was a ball controller, Ox, who's a ball carrier, and then a Fabinho replacement, a ball destroyer, because Fabinho possibly, maybe, has seen better days. That leads me, segues into asking you, Ben, does that explain the shift, or was there always interest in Romeo Lavia or his type?
Well, I think part of the shift for all suitors is just that Southampton went down, and as a consequence, there's a deal there to be had, at least in the eyes of suitors. Obviously, Southampton are being very bullish and saying it's a £50 million price tag, but we have to wait and see, because in essence, if the player wants to leave and Southampton need the money, then it may be that they have to sell. And even from Southampton's point of view, there will be an understanding that 50 million in public is not necessarily 50 million in private. So what the suitors are doing with Lavia is they're using the buyback clause, which is only active in 2024, and to Manchester City as a yardstick valuation, effectively saying to Southampton, you can keep the player and then see what happens in 2024. And then everybody knows that even if Manchester City don't take the player, you're still very likely to lose him, and for less. Or you can sell now and take the money and get it quicker and ultimately spend that money to try and get back up into the Premier League. Or you can keep hold of a player that wants to move because he sees the range of opportunities on the table as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And as soon as the player helps drive the move, even if it's amicable, it can be very difficult for a club to hang on to that player. Leicester, my club, have found that with James Maddison. It may be the same with Harvey Barnes as well. And if you remember, Leicester were pushing 55, 60 million. Spurs got Maddison for 40 million plus add-ons. And I think if Maddison is 40 million plus add-ons, yes, Lavia's young and contracts always inform valuation. But I think that will also be used in the market to say Lavia can't be 50 million. 50 million is not a rip-off, but it's probably 10 or 15 million more than suitors want to pay as a total package. But the beauty also of a younger player is that you have a lot of opportunity to predict their development with add-ons that are maybe not as gettable, but add to the structure and the overall value. And then if the player grows into that valuation, sure, you pay the add-ons, but it means that you've got success. And if you don't pay the add-ons, it might be because they didn't live up to their billing. So the Liverpool interest in Lavia has come before the signings of both Alexis McAllister and Dominic Szoboszlai, but they've upped the intensity, which shows you that they want this sort of tenacious midfield destroyer. And part of the appeal of looking at Lavia is down to the fact that not only do they think he's got a high ceiling, but they also believe that the Lavia at a club like Liverpool will be very different to Southampton, because not only has he been a relative shining light in a season where they went down despite a horrible error on the last game of the season against Liverpool, which sort of shows a bit of his lack of maturity, but that Lavia was playing with a side that didn't have much of the ball. And when he won the ball, he would look up and he wouldn't have an option. And he'd often have to go out wide, or he'd have to hang on to it and stagnate the play. And that's just the reality of a side that are fighting to stay up and are playing far more conservative. And Liverpool feel like if he's unleashed in a squad that has more of the ball and bosses the game more, then not only will he be able to win second balls and gain interceptions and be strong in the tackle, but the progressive passing, a bit like Declan Rice, when I mentioned him earlier, will improve. And he'll be able to be direct and have a lot more freedom.
We'll come out with freedom, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So he brings energy, he brings tenacity, and this is the appeal. But make no mistake, it isn't Liverpool, Southampton, even though they're probably the most active at this stage of the three suitors that are looking. Arsenal could come in, especially if Xhaka and Partey both go, but they're focused on Rice. And Chelsea could also come in. And the advantage that Chelsea have, even without any European football, is that Joe Shields, who used to be at Southampton, knows the player well, and of course was ex-Manchester City as well. So there is a relationship there between Joe Shields on the recruitment team at Chelsea and Lavia and his camp. And as a result, it's a reasonably open race at this point. But the next step is someone's actually got to place a bid. And it wouldn't remotely surprise me if Liverpool choose to move if they're the first team to place the bid, because these other suitors are occupied at the moment.
Absolutely. You make a very good point there, because in this race for Lavia, it seems, Errol, Chelsea are preoccupied, it seems, with Moises Caicedo, and rightly so. If you've got that kind of money, you go for Moises Caicedo. Meanwhile, we know Arsenal just spent a whole heap of change on Rice, which leaves, I guess, which leaves, like Ben was alluding to, sort of a few other teams that could possibly be in for him, but also few other teams that would have the same appeal as Liverpool Football Club. I believe Jurgen Klopp has spoken to the player, and that's huge. If Jurgen Klopp speaks to you, not many. I know there's some examples, but I think it's more down to finance than the appeal and lure of Klopp. But if the finances make sense, then not many. And like we found out from Szoboszlai, who says, once I knew Jurgen Klopp wanted me and Liverpool wanted me, I didn't care about Champions League. That's in today's quotes. People can go and check that out. Same with McAllister, a World Cup winner who had probably or possibly the choice of the world's best clubs to go to. The lure and the power of Liverpool is still strong, despite us being in the Europa League.
We are, and I think part of that law as well is look at the type of player that we're going for, look at the area of the pitch we're looking to address. The reason that we didn't get Champions League football last season was because our midfield area wasn't good enough. Out of the top six, we probably had the worst performing midfield. We finished where we finished because we had the worst performing midfield. You can argue on the day, are they better if you get Thiago, Fab, Henderson in the midfield? Can you go toe-to-toe? Yeah, but how many days did they have together last season? Not enough to consistently get you that run of games that are going to push you into the Champions League position. So when you're then talking to the players that we've identified, the players that we've already signed, and Klopp's having that conversation saying, I want you to be part of, what is clear to see is a bit of a rebuild at the moment for Liverpool, because last season it was about, the front line, including Cody Gakpo. Now that's kind of been restructured. You've got in the space of 12 months, you've got Diaz, Nunes, and Gakpo. In itself is a new front three. So there is a rebuild there of some description. And then midfield.
Clear description, absolutely clear rebuild. Yeah. I mean, how people cannot see that.
Now, and in 12 months, you've lost Origi, Minamino, Bobby, and you've lost Mane. Of course, 100% it is a rebuild in that sense. But now you're having the same conversation with lads that are going to come and bolster that midfield area for you. And when you look, you think, well, yeah, like if there's ever a time to join a Liverpool, it's the start. Everything that happened from Liverpool version 1.0 came that season when we was in the Europa League.
Great point.
Klopp comes and joins us. We're already in the competition. We haven't really got a love affair with it at that moment in time because, Brendan's come the way we got dumped out of the Champions League the season before. It hasn't felt great, but, you're in Europe, so you take it seriously. We go on an unbelievable ride that first season, and that is the catalyst for the fans believing that Klopp is the right man to lead us to where we want to be. And I think the same can be said here, but I think we've got a much stronger squad in general to be able to go one step further. We should be able to stick our necks out on the line and say, we should be winning the Europa League this season with the squad that we've got. If we manage the players properly, if we manage or prevent as many injuries as possible, there's nothing stopping what we're able to do within that competition. So for me, these lads, if you're Klopp and having a conversation with them, you can get into their area. They should see it as a great opportunity to come and really galvanise that midfield, give it fresh legs, and again, I said to you for a very long time, Grizz, we can no longer rely on the fullbacks being the creative sparks within Liverpool's engine room and within looking for that creativity. It's great that we've got forward lines that can create something out of nothing and, Salah that can score out of nowhere. But essentially, you need midfielders that can offer you assists and can offer you goals. We didn't have enough. For the last couple of seasons, we've not had enough. So Szoboszlai and getting McAllister in there and getting someone, as Ben's addressed, as Lavia, where they're able to take the ball forward, win the ball with a high press, up the pitch and make progressive passes. They're the type of profiles for me that will give us the springboard to actually be able to have a different dynamic in midfield. And it's quite exciting for us because that's where all the action happens. We've had so many conversations, Chris. If we win the midfield battle today, we win the game. We lost far too many last season. Next season, it's a new challenge. And teams are going to have to go back to the drawing board on how to break down this Liverpool side.
Ben, I know we have you for probably around 7 more minutes, so I'd like to get a few questions across to you. Obviously, everybody wants to know. So, according to your information, Lavia is probably going to be sold. Liverpool are very active, probably the most active right now, but that's as far as it's gone.
Yeah, I mean, Liverpool have obviously been busy making their first 2 signings, and it's not every week a new signing. I think the window's warped in this respect, partly because of an inflated market, partly because it's crazy all around and everyone is looking to get some business done early. But remember, windows work in phases. You have everything you've planned, get it done as early as you can. You have pre-season assessment because a manager won't want to bring in too many without looking at the chemistry and also giving opportunities to maybe some fringe players or young players that they've promised will have a chance to impress. Then you make a secondary decision and maybe you've got an either or choice at this point. Then, of course, you enter into the season and you could pick up an injury or something could not be working. You could have a change in system. So naturally, how you kick off the season or how you approach the season is the third phase. And then you have the build up towards deadline day, which is another mad scramble. So you want to get some business done early. But I think that everyone, like you said with Gakpo, is forgetting once you've brought in 1 or 2, it wouldn't be the norm to sign 6, 7, 8. So this 1 a week, why haven't we moved on to the next one? I think misrepresents how the window and certainly Liverpool work. So we mustn't get ahead of ourselves and deals can take time. But yes, there is very concrete interest in Lavia. It won't be the only name that Liverpool have got on the list, but that tells you they will definitely try and succeed, in my opinion, in bringing in a number 6, a destroyer, whatever you want to call it. And then from there, I think they'll turn their attention to defense.
Does Lavia go up the list because Kone got injured, or was Lavia always above Kone anyway? What are your thoughts on that, Ben?
I don't think it's necessarily an above, and this comes back again to Liverpool's model. So to give you an example with Chelsea, who have been very bullish and it's been ambitious and it could easily pay off. So they're disruptors, but in disrupting, you break more eggs to make your omelette, basically. And as a result of that, you might leave some players and agents wondering what's gone on because they perhaps have spoken like that to certain targets. Edson Alvarez is a good example over the course of the summer. They tried to sign him on the final day of the window. They couldn't. Ajax said no. And then Todd Boehly said, we'll be back. But they were not back. So the player thought, wait a minute, was I just a play on the final day? Do they really want me? And obviously you can get away with that sometimes, but you have to be trusted by these players, all players, even the ones, especially the ones that you don't succeed in, because there'll be overlap on agents, there'll be overlap on clubs. And as a consequence, you sometimes have to tread carefully. So with Liverpool, it's not like they're going to Kone or to Lavia and saying, listen, we're not coming for you now, Kone, because you're injured, or to Lavia, we've turned our attention to you now because Kone got injured. Otherwise, the player's going to say, in a decision that might have marginal points that decide if they go to one club or the other, this club fought for me and the other club didn't. And this, again, is a great example of the beauty of the Liverpool model. And it gets so unsung, but they work their asses off, basically, to convince players and to develop relationships with family members. And then probably 5 deals, 6 deals, 7 deals out of 10 don't come off and never get reported. And by the way, that's every club. That's not Liverpool. It is the same with anything, that because you need a high volume of targets, you're always only going to get a low proportion of deals coming off, even if you get all your targets. So think of the work that Liverpool had to do to convince Bellingham to come to Liverpool. He didn't join, but I can guarantee you that if Jude Bellingham is ever honest and does an interview on record, he will speak glowingly about Liverpool and say, I was quite prepared to go to Liverpool. And why? Because they developed the relationship with the dad. They developed the relationship with the wider family. They developed the relationship with the player. And this extends to everything Liverpool do. They go above and beyond to find points of marginal gain to give themselves the best possible chance. So, of course, with Kone, he's injured and it complicates the situation. I think it's a name that they liked and they explored. So we don't know whether they ever would have bid, and we don't know whether the injury is a deal breaker. And as a consequence, I'm not personally at this time in a position to say we can categorically rule that out like we can at this stage with Kephran Thuram. But Lavia appears where they're working. Lavia appears where their energy is. And I think the advantage of Lavia is they just feel that proven Premier League quality is going to be highly significant if they can pull the deal off. But I wouldn't want to mislead Liverpool fans either and say it's at the point where they're going to make an offer tonight or tomorrow. It can move fast, and that is just football. But Liverpool are not looking at who's the next one and how quickly can we get it done. They're looking at where's the value and when is the right time to move in the market. And sometimes that's fast, like with Szoboszlai, and sometimes that's a little bit slower.
Very last question, because Ben is going to go after this question.
I can give you like 10 minutes because the mountain's been delayed, so I can go at 9:10.
Amazing. Yeah, this is as we can celebrate like we celebrated Szoboszlai at this point. Masigo sent in a super says, how much do we value Levi Colwell? Which segues into, okay, so the midfield, we know that pretty much nailed on, that we bring in a midfielder. We know the profile of midfielder now that we're going for, so we can rest. We can sleep well that there will be 3 midfielders essentially bought in this transfer window.
Oh, 2 questions. Does one have to go and then add on to do what you're about to add on to?
Okay. We also demanded a centre-back or defensive cover, maybe in a fullback area or centre-back area. One at the very least. A few names have been bandied about. One that's at the top of the list is Levi Colwell. Levi Colwell of Chelsea. Spent his season at Brighton on loan. What do we know about this, Ben? And what's the state of play with this?
Chelsea don't think Colwell's for sale. It's as simple as that. If the situation changes, the player's going to have to drive the move. And Chelsea's intent is very much to offer Colwell a new long-term deal. And the contract is not imminently winding down either. So all of the cards are with Chelsea. And I suspect that Chelsea will fight tooth and nail to keep Colwell. They won't want to loan him out again either. And he's at that stage of his development where he shouldn't be loaned out. He should be thrown straight into the Chelsea first team. So the only window of opportunity for Brighton, who want Colwell, and Liverpool, who admire Colwell, but they've kept quite a safe distance because they're well aware of everything that I've outlined. The only chance is if the player says to Chelsea, I don't see any pathways here. I think you've got too many centre-backs. You're playing a back four. Potter was playing a back three at times, so had the opportunity to have one more centre-back, but Pochettino's expected to play a 4-2-3-1. So he might have to play two left-sided centre-backs, but he's certainly going to have to make some decisions, especially around Colwell, Badiashile, Fofana, three hugely talented centre-backs. And remember, you've also got Silva at the club as well. And if Silva's playing well, he's still elite, even though he's aging. So diminished game time is likely for him to allow these younger players to come through. But in a back four, at least one of Fofana, Badiashile and Colwell is going to be disappointed, and two might be disappointed because Silva is likely to still get some game time. You've got Chalobah as well. He's a little bit more versatile, but still also falls into that category too. So I think that first and foremost, Pochettino needs to convince Colwell, and otherwise you're going to have a very unhappy player. And I think this is more going to mirror, even though it's bad news for Liverpool fans, the William Saliba Arsenal narrative. He returned from Marseille. Situation was unclear. Marseille wanted the player. Arsenal realised they didn't want to sell. They valued him highly. They'd seen he had a good season with Marseille. What did Arteta do? Threw him straight into the starting lineup. The rest is history. And I think that Colwell will be the same. So I predict, it's only my opinion, I'm not Maurizio Pochettino, surprise, surprise, but I predict first game of the season against Liverpool at Stamford Bridge, in that centre-back two, one of them will, in the starting lineup, be Levi Colwell.
Interesting. Very, very interesting, that one. You're right. That's the best way of sort of seducing a player to stay, like show him the first team.
Sorry to add, Grizz, because I noticed it in the chat in my peripheral, which is, what's the value of Levi Colwell? Well, the value is the Chelsea valuation, not the actual valuation. So the Liverpool fan base are not going to agree with this, but when you consider Brighton made a £30 million bid, it was seen as derisory. Brighton are considering a £40 million bid. It will be rejected. Chelsea have basically got a Levi Colwell auto rejection email ready, and it will say, sorry, not for sale, and it will be instantly sent. And the only thing that's going to change that is something astronomical. So we can debate what Colwell's value and potential is. Obviously, it's informed by his profile, his potential, his contract length, and all of that. But regardless, 30 million's not going to cut it. 40 million's not going to cut it. 50 million's not going to cut it. 60 million's not going to cut it, simply because Chelsea are not looking to sell. They're looking to price out the market. So I don't even think that Chelsea would accept anything because they want Colwell as part of their project. But if you are of the belief that there's always a price, then I honestly think that you're looking at upwards of £75 million to even start a conversation, which is insane. It's crazy. It's sky high. But Chelsea don't just think Colwell's good. Chelsea think Colwell is elite. Chelsea think Colwell will become one of the Premier League's best ever centre-backs. And if you look at how well he's playing at the Euros, if you look at how well he did for Brighton, if you look at how well he did for Huddersfield on loan before that, there's evidence of that. Now, of course, they're doing all of this because if anyone does come knocking, he's going to be priced out the market. And the only thing that can possibly change that is if the player actively and aggressively tries to drive a move.
This is a very simple question, just a yes, no, if you know. We don't like speaking about Chelsea too much on this channel. Question to Ben, will Chelsea go for Cherki? I think Cherki is the Lyon. Is he at Lyon at the moment? Yes.
Yeah, phenomenal talent. And there's links for sure that are starting to bubble at this stage. I think that it's probably fair to say that Chelsea are well across the player. And obviously, with him only being 19 years of age, it fits into Chelsea's model. I don't think that they've moved yet in any kind of advanced sense. But what I can tell you is that Chelsea sent scouts to watch France in the under-21 Euros in terms of their build-up to the tournament several times. And as a consequence, this isn't anything particularly new. But they were also there to look at Malo Gusto, who they ended up signing. So it was sort of a 2-for-1 in many ways. And I think what Chelsea like about Cherki from the scouting report, but again, they've not moved on it yet in a practical sense, is just that the creativity is sky high and he's quite an unpredictable attacking midfielder. So when you want a spark, when you want someone to single-handedly take the game by the scruff of the neck, this is the player that you call upon. But he's young and it needs some kind of development, and there's not necessarily that many pathways into the Chelsea team at the moment for him. So that lends itself to two theories if Chelsea move. One is they're buying these players because their model is just young talent. If they can get them, the value will go up. Even if they never end up coming to Chelsea or playing for Chelsea, does it really matter? Because they're building a multi-club model. They've obviously got 100% or very near to 100% ownership of Strasbourg. The actual percentage hasn't been clarified still yet, but they basically own Strasbourg. And then he's at Lyon. And if you look at what Chelsea did with Lyon, with Malo Gusto, they signed him, they loaned him straight back. It was a January signing. He's only back with the squad now, but they loaned him back for the second half of the season. So maybe there's a scenario there where he could actually be bought by Chelsea and then be loaned back. Chelsea are also looking at Tino Livramento at Southampton. I don't think they'll succeed with that one. The player would rather either stay at Southampton or go to Newcastle, but there's no fee that's been agreed with Newcastle. But again, it's the same thing whereby you buy and you loan back because then you give the player a pathway. So I have no information as to whether or not that's been discussed. I don't think it's that advanced at this point. So yeah, on the radar. I know that fans hate it when we use those terms, but it's basically just code for interest. They've scouted him. They've got the data on him. Let's see whether they move. But Chelsea now do have the ability to give these players pathways, and they also have a relationship with the owner at Lyon, John Textor, which is why they were able to do the deal for Malo Gusto to everyone's liking. It was just a shame with Gusto that as soon as he got loaned back, he got injured, so he didn't get as much game time in the second half of the season with Lyon. So I wouldn't say this one is just a rumour. I think there's a little bit of substance to it, and let's see how it develops over the course of the summer.
Guys, there's a couple more super chats, but me and Errol can deal with them. We will speak about them. What I wanted to ask, last final question. If Levi Colwell is unattainable, which most and many think is there anything that we should keep an eye on in the up and coming weeks from a Liverpool centre-back point of view, in your opinion?
I think we should keep an eye on Liverpool centre-back targets for sure. I don't think it's something that they're working on as aggressively as that destroyer position at this point.
So you feel the first port of call right now is the midfield, finishing off the midfield recruitment? Well,
I mean, I wouldn't quite bill it like that, only because you move when's right in the market.
Yeah, of course.
Players just won't be available. Certain clubs might be looking for replacements before they're prepared to sell. So, of course, it's not a case that they're just in a room with one position saying, let's focus on this position. Of course, they're spinning multiple plates. And as a consequence, they will be looking at centre-backs. I was actually quite surprised that Liverpool didn't move for Evan and Dicker. Obviously, it's not possible now. He's gone elsewhere. But that was a good signing on a free transfer, very highly rated. They obviously saw something in terms of the player and his development that put them off moving there. But that was a target that Liverpool had looked at historically. Then, for example, they like Gvardiol, but we know that Manchester City are pushing there. And I don't think that one is in the price point for Liverpool. I think in Portuguese media, they're pushing Gonzalo Inácio quite hard and suggesting that Liverpool might take advantage of a deal there for 45 million euros. That's not something that I can add too much to. But I think what's absolutely clear is that there's a list of centre-backs in particular. And I think that left-footed centre-backs or left-sided centre-backs, depending on how you want to bill it, are going to be essential. And whether that's for now or whether that's for the future, I think we need to keep a very, very close eye on Liverpool and the left side of the centre-back area because we know that they need depth there. So with the situation as far as Ignacio is concerned, there is a release clause. So that obviously...
We know we like a release clause. We know we like a release clause.
But, you know, I don't think that it's necessarily one of those release clauses either that it is set sky high above value. But sometimes when you do the deal with the release clause and you trigger it in Portugal, I'm not saying I have any knowledge specifically about this one, but I certainly know it was the case with Enzo Fernandez and Chelsea and a few others, that the terms of triggering the clause are not good. So you often either have to go above the release clause to get better payment terms, or you have to hope that the release clause is deemed to be above market value and you can come in below and still get a better deal structurally. And I think the other thing to say with that particular deal, which is not good news, is that from the perspective of the seller, they are very much of the belief that they may still be able to get a new contract, and that new contract would naturally set a new release clause. Now, new release clause, new contract doesn't always mean the player isn't for sale, but it could give the wage bill a bump from the player's perspective. And in doing so, it could change the terms of the release clause, which is highly significant, obviously, because it would allow, in this case, Sporting a lot more control over the player and his future. So keep an eye on that one, because sometimes the interest is sort of leveraged and then the player actually gets a deal at the club and doesn't end up going anywhere. So there's a few things to sort of watch here, but what I can tell you is that regardless of what name they fix upon, centre-back is also going to be a priority for Liverpool for sure.
There you go, guys. You have it from the, I don't want to refer to you as a horse, but you know what I mean. They use that analogy, don't they? From the horse's mouth. Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm not going to keep you a minute longer.
The horse's mouth, I would be the messenger. The horse's mouth would be Ignacio, or would be Liverpool Football Club. I think journalists are never direct from the horse's mouth. I think we're the messenger.
The messenger, yeah. The messenger from the horses. That's right. That's right. But listen, of course, your time is valuable. Thank you very much. We shall be speaking again. This transfer window seems to be wild and getting wilder, and you are getting busier and busier. So all the best, and we'll catch up soon. Thank you very much, people. Make sure you go and check out Ben's great work. I will have all his social media, social media handles in the description of the video. Thank you very much for your time, Ben.
Absolute pleasure. Keep up the good work. Good luck to Liverpool in pre-season. We'll speak soon.
Take care. Bye-bye. Brilliant. Errol, a couple of super chats that we can deal with.
Let's do it, bro. Let's do it.
KQZI Institute says, thank you for the super chat, my brother. He says, what with the potential arrival of Lavia, what will it mean for Stefan Bajcetic? 18-year-old, 19-year-old. Would you say similar type of players? I don't think they're that similar. I think Bajcetic has got the possible potential of playing as an 8, maybe, whereas Lavia is more of a sitter, holder. But are you one of these that cares? Like, I'm being honest. I'm being brutally honest. I don't.
You want the two young lads to push each other on.
Yeah.
The same way we said about Harvey and the likes of Curtis and a couple of other young men and Carvalho. Like, you're in there and there's only going to be one that rises to the top. And like, I'm fine with that. Put that competition in there from early. Yeah. You know, Bajcetic to me is still a bonus. We didn't know nothing about him 12 months ago. So we know what he's capable of. We know that he's got the trust of Klopp, and that's great. But from my perspective, there are 4 competitions next season, and we're going to need at least a 6 in at least. Well, if you consider the FA Cup first couple of rounds and the League Cup in the same bracket from that domestic standpoint, you're going to need at least 3 6s to try and rotate between those competitions. You're going to want 1 in Europe, you're going to want 1 for your domestic cups, and you're going to want 1 for the Premier League week in, week out. That allows these lads an opportunity to at least pigeonhole, right? If we get a running domestically for the cup games, Bajcetic might be a man.
Let's say we are doing that. I like that thinking, actually. I really like that thinking, right? Let's, between us, do that. Let's say for the league, are we saying Fabinho, right? It's
Yeah,
fairly obvious.
you've got the experience, especially if we're going to have the young lads around them to give them the legs. Only if Fabinho looks worse when he's got a new injection of legs do we then look at the other options. But as it stands, Fabinho for the Prem all day.
Okay. What are we saying for the Europa? Shall we go with Hendo as an experienced guy in the, and then youngsters around him in Europa? Does that make sense to you?
It makes sense. It does make sense. But as you said, then you can play Bajcetic in the 8 if you're, again, it depends.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, it depends.
That's what I mean.
You could arguably play Jones on the left and you could play Bajcetic on the right. You could argue that. But then also, you could also argue that Szoboszlai could get a game in some of the Europa League. Depends on the groups. But essentially, yeah, I'd happily have Henderson, 2 young lads in and around him.
And then we can say to Lavia, you get every single cup game, and also Europa League games as well, because Henderson will be used in the league
because that's week in, week out. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly, and I like that theory. That could definitely work. Look, what will it mean for Bajcetic? I just let the manager handle that. KQZ. I'm not really fussed, even if it hampers him, whatever. I'm past that worrying about youngsters' progress. I'm being selfish. I'm a Liverpool fan. I just want Liverpool to play brilliant every week, win games of football every week. I don't care about the age right now or the youngsters' progress, whatever. I'm ruthless. Look, if we want ruthlessness and we want to put sentimental feelings away, then we've got to keep it across the board level. Like youngsters, they'll handle themselves. If they're good enough, they will handle themselves, right?
Yeah,
they will handle themselves.
He's proved he's got the ability to rise to the challenge, so that means well to me, because that's a benchmark then. And if that's the benchmark, Lavia's got to be above that benchmark to even justify his place in any starting 11. So to me, it can only bode well.
Terry Tibbs talks for you. I love Terry Tibbs.
Terry.
The only issue is we do things behind the scenes and get nervous when players are all over the paper. It makes me think we won't get him. Yeah, you were speaking about this. You don't really get invested too much in terms of rumors. You just keep a clear mind, don't you? You were saying until it's rock solid from one of the big dogs.
Yeah, and like literally, bro, like our phones blow up on the daily with speculation, with rumors. Then you go onto Twitter, there's more speculation, there's more rumors, there's more links. Like until it's like nigh on done and dusted, I'm not really getting drawn into too many of these transfer rumors. Like I said about Jude, it didn't sit right with me, so I wasn't overly invested myself. I had my opinion. I didn't think we was going to get him. I turned out to be right. Was it because I knew anything more than the average? No, that was just how my gut was. I don't like seeing this Liverpool that we've come so accustomed to getting drawn into transfer sagas. It's not really been us. I remember, bro, I told you this story before. I used to do paper round back in the day when I was a kid. I remember delivering the Echo after school every night, and I'd open the back page to see who was linked with, to see which signing, and I did that for years, bro, and used to get drawn in to the whole heap of signings that most of the time we didn't even sign them. And I'd get gassed. I'd be telling people like I was the plug just because I delivered the Echo,
Brilliant. I used to, me, I used to be before your time. I used to be on the team talk phone calls, the club call and all that, ringing up. Bro, I was mental for that, man. But listen, by the way, guys, let's get to 400 likes before we finish the show. We're finishing up right now, a couple of minutes left. Let's get up to 400 likes because that would be a nice ratio. Let's do that right now for me. That would be much appreciated. Terry says, lad, if we get Lavia, I'll kick me, man.
I've seen that before.
Don't do that, bro. We don't recommend that. We don't believe in doing that.
We
don't
condone violence.
We do not condone violence. Please. Shah says I use teletext for transfers. Listen, there was a point at one stage where Elon Musk was going on mad, where I thought teletext is going to have to come back. The way he's handling Twitter, the way he's handling social media, there was Twitter's gone down and everyone went mad for a few hours. No, not for a few hours. Still a couple of days, right? People are going absolutely mad. So teletext and CFAX and all them things might come back. But overall, are you feeling good going into the preseason? Is your vibe back? Are you re-energized? Are you looking forward to it? Because I know we were on a bit of a downer.
You've got to, bro. It's a new season, new ambitions, new hopes, all of them things, all of those kind of cliches can be drawn back out. But what I like is that Liverpool aren't getting distracted. We're not getting drawn into, bidding wars. We're not getting, and then straight away, could have got drawn into Rice. Quality player there, you knew that he was going to go. If the money's there, go pay. But, you know, you're going to get drawn into a bidding war with Arsenal. Mount, you know, there was the rumours there that, you know, we wanted Mount earlier. He was going to be that creative 8 for a long time again. This is why I don't get drawn in, because where's he going to end up? He's ended up with Man U. You know, there are other rumours there, Tonali, other players dotted about. I just like the way Liverpool just say, he's our guy. Nobody knows it yet, but we're going to go get him. And then when we get him, we got him. And then you can make your assertion on whether you think it's going to be a good bit of business. But from my perspective, the things that are giving me the trust and the belief again, because until I see the team play, I won't have trust that they have what it takes to do it week in, week out. I need to see it with my own eyes before I can like wholeheartedly just like say, yeah, man, I'm back on the wagon, and Jürgen and the boys are going to take us to the promised land. But what I will say in terms of the way that the business has been conducted so far, we've identified players that are going to fit exactly what it is that we need them to do going forward. i.e., irrespective of what happens with Klopp's contract in the next 2 to 3 years, irrespective of what happens to Henderson and Fabinho, we are now going to have some young dons within that midfield engine room that add a different level of guile to what we've previously and currently got. To me, that's an important factor, simply because 2.0 needed that. I've said it before. 2.0 needed that. We can no longer keep relying on the fullbacks being that creative force. I've missed it. I grew up on Gerrard, bro. I've grew up on a midfield monster doing bits for us, winning games from the centre of the park. And we've had a very functional midfield, and it's been great because we've actually put that generational talent aside in that area to say the function is going to get us to the promised land. And it was a sacrifice, but it got us there. So it's like, you can't argue when function delivers. But now we know we can deliver with function, but we can also deliver with style. If you merge the two together, this Liverpool team could be a beast, bro. It just has to all come together. And I think the young lads will re-energize some of the old heads in the squad. It'll give fresh legs back to Fabinho. Hopefully we keep Thiago in the fold as well for the quality that he pursues across the rest of the team, and we're cooking, bro. We could be cooking next season.
Yeah, look, we didn't get a chance to speak about the Thiago situation. Look, we know that Thiago most likely won't be renewed, and he has a year left on his contract. We know a lot of teams are spending a lot of money in the Saudi Pro League. We also know Steven Gerrard has got a job there. So obviously everyone is sort of putting 1 and 1, making 3. As far as I understand, Thiago doesn't want to leave Liverpool. He wants to stay at Liverpool, which is massive and is huge. But I don't know. We had a massive show yesterday on Redfellas on Sunday. It's Tuesday today. And even today, shout out.
I couldn't even get on the bill.
I know, man. Look at that all-star cast panel, man. You've been demoted, man. You've been injured, remember? So you got you got, you know what I mean? So the people that's got your place, they held. I'm loyal, bro. but we put the Thiago question. I'm gonna put it to you, Errol. I think I've got the answer from what you just said. But if we're getting a substantial bid of 15 million plus,
it's going to cost us 8 to keep him for the season anyway. For me, we've already going to take a sacrifice by being in the Europa League. We may as well keep the player to get us to push us back to the Champions League, then leave on a free with our blessing. If that's what it takes, I can't see it. I don't want to see him leave Liverpool Football Club in a season where it finally feels as though we have
legs around
him to manage his
minutes. Let him play his game. Finally, we may have the legs to enable Thiago to play his game as opposed to Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool's game.
Yeah, you're spitting, bro, and that's it. If we had any sense, and that's why I do trust that we've got some good football guys there, and they'll have their reasons if they feel it's appropriate for him to go. But I feel the right football people will say that's what we bought him in for in the first place. We've not been able to unleash it. This is our 1 season to unlock that Thiago. We can manage his minutes. We can get him in all the important games that we're going to play this season, and he will be a match winner and a difference maker for us in that midfield if we keep hold of him. And I hope that Klopp is at the forefront of that conversation.
You've convinced me, you know that, because yesterday I had James James Redmond, and I had Zuberi, my partner in crime, on the call-in show, and we had a fantastic little to and fro. You know, we even done a poll, and the poll came out 50-50, you know, I'm not going to lie to you. Nobody can decide, man, because it's such a delicate story. You know why? I'll tell you why yesterday. Yesterday, in the fans' heads was, if we sell Thiago or a player, we bring in two. We bring in Lavia and Thuram. It's very obvious that we're not going to bring in both now, because it kind of means Thiago is going to stay. Because if we're not pursuing Thuram and we're pursuing Lavia, suggests to me that it's going to be, you know, just one in and none out.
Well, it's all right. So play the hypothetical game. We keep Thiago. We achieve our goals of at least getting back into the Champions League, whether that be through winning the Europa League or finishing in the top 4. Then he goes on a free. You've got a big bag again to go and spend. If you need to go and buy another young centre mid, you've got the opportunity to bring that centre mid in a year's time. Because arguably, if we lock off the third centre mid this season, keep Thiago, and we then get a defender, the actual squad as a whole is set. You only really need, at next season, you're only going to need one or two, another centre back and another midfielder at a push. And you should have the money to go and get your main target.
It's there. And we're going to do more shows on sort of how we're seeing the squad now. Yeah, we were very unhappy with the state of the squad come the end of the season, but it looks like the emergence of a very solid squad now.
Let me ask you it this way round then, Grizz, yeah? Thiago is a free on the market, but he's going to cost you $8 million to bring him into Liverpool this summer to help your midfield rebuild. Do you buy him, yes or no? That's the question you need to... For one season, that's the question you need to ask yourself. That's the way round you need to frame it. If you had the chance to bring a player of his quality into your squad this season, knowing the surgery that you need, and the quad... Sloboslai's already in. McAllister's already in. You're potentially going to get your next guy in there in Lavia, and you can add Thiago into that mix for them. Do you not think that's the age for the experience and the quality, the profile, all of those things? Do you bring him in, yes or no?
100% you do. Don't forget the emergence of Curtis Jones in the last couple of months of the season, and he's continued that form in the England under-21 setup. Don't forget the talented who will be motivated like fuck now after seeing Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, because he's a little fighter, you know. I know he's had good games and bad games. People talking about him. Does he fit the stylistically in this new formation in the way of playing? I wouldn't rule it out yet. Give him another chance. And then look, despite what we think and despite the form that they've shown, Fabinho and Henderson aren't going anywhere. So if we've got these three, McAllister, Szoboszlai, and let's say Lavia, they're pretty much, in my opinion, the right age, the right profile, stylistically of player that's going to step in. Look who they're replacing, Errol. Keita, Ox, Milner.
It's a no-brainer, bro.
It's a no-brainer.
I'm seeing people in the chat saying Thiago doesn't fit this new system. Do you know what kind of footballer we've got? Do you know how intelligent this man is? Like, he can fit in any system. He might not be the mold of, you know, in terms of he's going to be the six in this, but that's not his job. You don't want him doing that. If you've got him doing that job, you're wasting his talent. But he can play a role in any system in the midfield because he's just that clever. He's that good. And I personally think if we keep him, not only does he help bed in these new players, but he helps bring the quality out of other players that we've already started to unearth. The percentages of the squad, the Nunez's, giving him the confidence, the language barriers of obviously a couple of the other lads potentially as well. He is a great facilitator of that quality in terms of how best are you going to be set by example. Whatever Thiago does, you can bet your hat on it that if you do it, you go and moving in the right direction. If we lose that, we lose a general. We can't. Do you know
the way I've looked at it now, and I've toed and froed. I must admit, I flip-flopped. I must admit the fact that I was being seduced by the idea of Lavia and Thuram. It was. But now there's absolutely zero debate in my head. I agree with everything that you've said because you cannot lose. You can't just rely on Elliott, Jones, two elders in Henderson and Fabinho.
And you
You can't do it, and you have to have another look. Again, I'm not disrespecting Fabinho Henderson. In my opinion, I'm stating facts. You're never going to see the best of them, right? But what you will see of Thiago is when he's fit, he still can ball.
He's the best midfielder. When he's fit, he's the best.
When he's fit,
midfielder.
he can still ball, and you can see him. And can you imagine a young Lavia, even McAllister is 24, 25, learning from Thiago.
Can you imagine him not having to try and break the play up every 5 fucking minutes, and he can just receive the ball, recycle the ball, or receive the ball, play progressive pass, drop the shoulder, turn, play the ball forward. If that's all he's got to do, and all
Dominic
he's got to
says, Dominic says when he's fit. But the thing is, right, Dominic, I agreed with you before because I was thinking they're just not available enough. But now that we've got 3, players, fit young players who so far in their career have got brilliant availability rates. If we're adding them 3 and replacing them with we're relying on Ox, Naby, Milner, who are non-entities really in effect, then we don't rely on Thiago now, you see. Now Thiago can rest and play in the games that we need him. How many times was there big games and we're thinking, where the fuck's Thiago?
Oh, he can be the luxury. Like what people have to remember is what Gundogan has been to City these last 2 seasons is what Thiago should be for Liverpool.
He didn't play Thiago. Yeah, that's a great point.
For at least one season, because we've not been able to utilize that yet. We've had to use Thiago for all the wrong reasons because we've needed an extra body in midfield. Now we can actually say to him, we can put them out in the calendar. You can give them the calendar before a ball's even kicked and say, wrap you up, like, because you're only playing them 20 games, 25 games all season. Don't even think about nothing else. You're just playing them games when we need it, and that's it. And there might be a run-in at that point, and that might change things in the last 8, where you're saying, right, last 8, we're going to use you 6 out of those 8 games as well, because you're that guy for us. But trust me, his experience, his quality will come good over the course of a very long season where you're playing in 4 very difficult competitions and you're playing the increased games as a result of being in the Europa League. It would be foolish from a footballing perspective to let a talent like that walk out the door, even for the sake of 15 mil.
Well, there you go, guys. If you think it was 50-50, the vote was 50-50. Zuberi had me swaying this way. James had me swaying this way. I couldn't decide. Errol's come in and smashed the ball out of the park. And I've decided Thiago has to stay. Thiago will guide us back into the Champions League, aided ably by by Curtis Jones, by the fella McAllister, and hopefully, again, prayers up, Lavia as well. People, I hope you guys have enjoyed today. I've enjoyed it. Time's flown, man. Wow. Really enjoyed it. We've covered a lot of topics. Again, thanks to Ben. Thanks to Errol for making an appearance on my channel as well. Busy man as well. If you haven't liked the stream, what's the purpose of your existence on YouTube channels? Like, if you haven't liked what you've been watching for over an hour, it makes no sense, right? It's like you're sitting through a movie that you don't need to watch, but you still sit through it. Why did you do it? You know what I mean? So like the stream if you haven't. Subscribe if you haven't. Joseph's been asking me, Grizz, you've been watching the Ashes. I love the Ashes. Even when I used to watch cricket loads, but I don't get time anymore. But Ashes is something, if I don't watch it, I 100% watch the highlights at the end of the day. So I've been watching it. It's riveting. England playing a bit recklessly. I know all this Baz ball, they call it. It reminds me a bit of like Kevin Keegan, Newcastle, kamikaze type of cricket. You know what I mean? It's a bit wild. Yeah, it's very advanced.
It's a foreign language to me now, but
yeah. Don't worry. I'll teach you.
I have a Jamaican flag, but I'll teach
you cricket one day. Don't worry about all that. But listen, people, smash the like on your way out. This has been the Tic Tac Transfer Carnage show. Hope you've enjoyed it. No Thuram, Lavia looking likely, as the case may be, and Thiago looking to stay. That's your main headlines, takeaway headlines for tonight's show. Peace, love, tranquility.